often feel like the work we do is not taken advantage of as much as it could. Sometimes we feel like the reports we've done, even if they've been commissioned by leaders, are only given a cursory consideration and then put on a shelf, and then mission leaders will make the decisions that they wanted to make in the first place.
As indigenous leaders, we need to think about how we can contextualize the gospel in our own culture, because we are not Western culture, we are not Korean culture, but we are Mongolian culture. So I'm not going to root it out from my culture, but how we can take the gospel and root in our own culture.
Since the earthquake in Nepal, I think there is a real danger of a backlash against Christians, and I think that's already happening. One of the main risk factors is this persecution, and as researchers we have to be very careful that we don't put any information in the public sphere that could endanger Christians in vulnerable situations.
It costs to do interviews, to document, to write, and because we're dependent upon funding, the funding sources are just not there to make it happen.
What is very important for the research is that it is bottom up within the country, and that it is driven by the needs from within the country, by people have a very good feel of what is actually going on. And then second, it needs to be owned in a certain sense by the national church, that they don't have the feeling this is something that missionaries are doing and are trying to push on us.
One of the problems I think has occurred in some places is that the research is done by people who are not necessarily involved in ministry in churches. And I think that the research is far better if people are actually involved in ministry and can be seeking to apply ministry in church.
If you look at the dominant African worldview as being animistic, and the dominant worldview of the West being more secular humanistic, where data is important, where you make decisions based upon data, we tend to make decisions based upon more intuition and more relational and more mystical. So again, being an oral culture, that plays against our documenting of research. So there's a cultural barrier that we need to overcome in terms of learning how to use data as a means of decision making.
One of the barriers is that people don't recognize that research is Christian ministry. They think it's a secular pursuit. Second is churches don't have a vision for supporting researchers.
We can't guarantee results. All we can do is tell you a story. We tell you a story whether the stories are presented as narrative, or we tell you a story whether the story is presented in a more statistical or demographic fashion. We hope the story inspires you. We hope the story might inform you. We hope the story might in some way shape the way you go about doing your own current mission or ministry. But there is stuff there to be learned.